isn't a convenience, it's a necessity. Since I introduced this legislation 2 weeks ago, my office phones have been ringing nonstop with calls from Americans all across the country who have exhausted or soon will exhaust their benefits, asking, when is it going to pass? I've heard it from paraplegics who cannot find a job because attorneys are competing against them for employment, from contractors who are still reeling from the collapse of the housing market, and from school teachers whose local school districts could not afford to keep them on the payroll. Without quick action, they will become unable to afford their mortgages or health coverage. Providing these Americans with modest economic lifeline is not only the humane thing to do, but it's in the economic interest of the country. Every UI dollar generates $1.64 in positive impact in the economy. That supports existing jobs and our fragile housing market. In other words, UI, unemployment insurance, is a win for every American. I urge all members to support this bipartisan, budget-neutral bill to extend unemployment benefits, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 3548, the Unemployment Compensation Extension Act. This legislation provides up to 3 months additional federal extended unemployment benefits to long-term unemployed individuals in states where the unemployment rate is 8.5% or higher. That's on top of the 18 months of state and federal unemployment benefits already available in places with unemployment at those levels. With the passage of this bill, folks who are unemployed could potentially receive up to 21 months of combined unemployment benefits. Right now, more than half of the states will benefit from this bill. An incredible 29 states are struggling with unemployment rates of 8.5% or higher. In my home state of Kentucky, the unemployment rate is 11.1%, leaving more than 1 out of every 10 Kentuckians out of work. That's a staggering number. The fact that we're here today discussing a measure that will provide Americans with nearly 2 years' worth of unemployment benefits is yet another sign of the failure of this administration's stimulus plan to create jobs. Nothing establishes that more clearly than the economic trends in states like the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Since February 2009, when the stimulus law was signed, almost 38,000 Kentuckians have been added to the unemployment rolls, and the unemployment rate has surged from 9.3% in February to 11.1% today. Over the past year, nearly 123,000 Kentuckians have claimed emergency unemployment benefits after their traditional benefit allowances expired. Every week, between 800 and 1,200 Kentucky residents are running out of unemployment benefits. Earlier this month, Kentucky Governor Steve Beshear sent a letter to the Kentucky delegation stating that the loss of unemployment benefits would be devastating to many families and will only sink Kentucky further behind in the race towards economic recovery. State and federal unemployment accounts are already drained, and we're headed for more than $100 billion deficits in these supposed trust funds by the end of 2010, with $200 billion deficits by the end of 2012. All of that spending will come at a huge price, which could require a doubling or more of state payroll taxes and possibly federal tax hikes as well. Payroll tax hikes mean a tax on jobs and ultimately on job creation, which brings us back to the real point of jobs. In February, the administration promised its stimulus plan would create 3.5 million jobs. We're still waiting. While the administration claims to have created or saved 1 million jobs, in the real world, Americans have witnessed the continued destruction of 3 million jobs since the beginning of this year. The administration promised with its stimulus bill that national unemployment would not exceed 8%. It's now 9.7% nationally, and the president has said he now expects it to exceed 10% by the end of the year. Earlier this month, Larry Summers, chair of the President's National Economic Council, said that the level of unemployment is unacceptably high and will remain so for a number of years. It's time to provide much-needed help and assistance to the millions of Americans who are struggling in states with outrageous unemployment rates. They should not be made to suffer for the failure of this administration's policies that have failed to create the promised jobs. I support these extended benefits in H.R. 3548 to help long-term unemployed workers in Kentucky and other states where jobs are the hardest to find. But we need to move beyond this secondary debate to the primary task of creating jobs instead of undermining job creation. Until we do that, we're missing the point. What Americans want are jobs, not handouts from the government,